G'day Dark Realmers, it's horror author and illustrator Michael J. Elliott here with you again. It's February and that means it's time for some more movie reviews. And this month I've got an Outback Aussie thriller for you. I've got a psychological drama. I've got a campfire teenage let's tell scary stories type movie and a heap more. So let's get started, hey? Yeah! Okay, Dark Realmers, this one's a really interesting mix of part horror, part political conspiracy and part action. Now, it concerns a child called Angel, and she murdered her grandmother and her best friend, and she was sent away to a prison or mental institution and never to be released. Well, an MP in the British government feels sorry for her and has her released early on the proviso that she'll be strictly monitored, of course. Well, things turn out rather differently than this MP expected, because Angel goes on another killing rampage. And there's a few horror scenes in here, I will admit, some to make you cringe a bit, but overall it's more psychologically dark than anything else. Now, as the story progresses, there's a psychiatrist played by John Hannah, who you may remember from 4 Weddings and a Funeral. He was the partner of Simon Callow, who died. That was the funeral. Okay, and he's been in heaps of others, including the Mummy series. But he teams up with a SAS operative, a woman operative, who is sent to track down Angel. Okay, but there's a lot of twists and turns in this that you won't see coming. And it's actually quite suspenseful. It's a very good movie. As I said, there's a few horror scenes in there, not too many. It mainly deals with the operatives trying to track down Angel and what Angel is doing in the time that they're tracking her down. And part of the suspense, Dark Realmers, comes from when she's being quite normal and, you know, just an everyday person. Angel seems, you sit there and you wonder, when's she going to snap? When is she going to turn? And when it comes, it's very surprising. I can recommend this one. Now, I saw this one on Netflix. That's right, there's some great movies being streamed here on Netflix and on YouTube, and I actually saw this one on YouTube, so I recommend this one to you. I'll put some links down below for you so you can check out some of these movies. Okay, but that's one for maybe a night with friends. I wouldn't watch this by yourself terribly much, Dark Realmers. Now, this one is for everyone who loves the old master of horror, Mr. Poe himself, who wrote, I should say, brilliant atmospheric works, and this is no exception. This one is more suspense, more creep, more atmosphere, and you'll find that it's builds up very slowly. The tension is slowly ratcheted up. It's brilliantly filmed. And it's visually spectacular. The scenes of the early turn of the century lighthouse are just beautiful, and the scenery of the seascape coming in. Now, this stars Aussie actor Vernon Wells. Now, he plays a lighthouse keeper. Obviously, that's where the title comes from. But a young man whose boat capsizes is washed up on the shore. And he is taken in by Vernon Wells, and he obviously wants to get back, and Vernon Wells tells him that, look, there's no way off by yourself, you'll need the ferry, which takes 2 weeks before it arrives. Well, while he's there, he meets a woman who keeps running away from him, and he gradually gets to know this woman, and he assumes that it's Vernon Wells's wife, and he says no, she drowned, she drowned herself. Well, I can't tell you too much because the plot will be ruined for you, but it's wonderful as this young man discovers things that have gone on before he arrived on the island where the lighthouse is. It's very, very creepy, it's very dark, and the story's twist is just to die for. It's really, really good. It's so wonderful to see the works of Edgar Allan Poe being filmed. Of course, they have been for a long time, and you'll probably remember some of the wonderful ones like The Mask of the Red Death with the classic horror actor Vincent Price, just to name one. But this one is very faithful to the story, to the book itself. As I said, the photography in it is beautiful. The beautiful scenes of the turn of the century lighthouse itself, you know, its architecture is just wonderful. And as I said, if you're more into suspense and a build-up of tension and, you know, not so much gore and slash and everything, I would definitely recommend this one for you, Dark Realmers. Now, this one is actually available here on YouTube, and I'll put the link down for you below, okay? Okay, Dark Realmers, the next one we've got for you on our list is an Aussie movie called Strangerland. Okay, Dark Realmers, now at the risk of sounding very unpatriotic, I am not a big fan of Aussie movies. There are some I absolutely adore, but for the main part, they leave me cold. And one of the reasons I get really annoyed with Australian films is their almost compulsion to keep reminding the audience that they are an Australian film. Now, what I mean by that is, in other movies where they're set in America or London or whatever, we may get an establishing shot of Big Ben or the Statue of Liberty, and that basically sets up for the audience where the movie is taking place. Now, of course, a lot of Aussie films are set in the outback, and Strangerland is no different. But Aussie films tend to constantly show shots of the outback or the desert or the little hick town or whatever it is, almost as though they're scared that the audience is too stupid or too, not on the ball enough to realise where the film is being made or taking place, okay? Now, in Strangerland, which stars Nicole Kidman, Joseph Fiennes and Hugo Weaving, it's the story of a family who move to a desert outback town. And the reason they move is that their sexually promiscuous daughter Lily was having an affair with the school teacher, and that resulted in her father beating up the school teacher, and of course, yes, the town wasn't so much designed for them anymore. So they moved to this small town, and basically we get told from the start, we see the outback, we see the heat shimmer and everything like that. Okay, that's great, so we know it must be hot. So we have the daughter saying it's 40 degrees Celsius outside. Okay, that's it. We don't need to know anymore. Now, I know the desert is a major part of this film, and I'll explain why soon, but we don't need to keep getting beaten over the head with it. Please, filmmakers, don't. You know, moviegoers are very intelligent people. They don't need that. Anyway, basically the story goes that the young son, Tom, when he can't sleep at night, he goes for walks. You know, and in the new town he goes out for a walk. Now, one night he goes out and he follows his sister Lily, and they both disappear. Now, from there it's part psychological drama, it's tension, all that sort of thing, but it's emotionally unfulfilling. I'm sorry, Dark Realmers, but there are parts in this movie where they've added something and never followed through with it. Now, there's a thing in writing called Chekhov's gun, and that basically, the writer Anton Chekhov said, if you're going to go into detail and describe a gun and where it's placed in a house or whatever, you better make sure that that gun turns up somewhere in the plot, otherwise you're cheating readers. And this is what happens in Strangerland. We have a case where Nicole Kidman is sexually frustrated, so she tries to get on with the mentally handicapped young Aboriginal helper from that helps them around the house. When that doesn't work, she tries to sexually seduce Hugo Weaving, and that doesn't work, and then she runs off to the desert. No explanation, nothing. Okay, that was very frustrating for me. Also too was the fact that there's a hint, just a hint, that this may have something to do, this disappearance may have something to do with Aboriginal myths or legends or something like that. And she asks one of the women in town, you know, what do you know? Tell me, what about the rainbow serpent? Well, she says, you know, they're just stories. That doesn't go anywhere either. Now, that's very annoying and very frustrating for audiences, especially when you think that perhaps this isn't just a standard disappearance, as may be the case. And finally, what happens is the son is found and recovered, but he refuses to speak. I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end, but it is very, very weak. It is almost like they cobbled the ending together, and there you go, we've explained everything, all done. Okay? Very, very unsatisfying, and as writers, script writers should be ashamed of themselves for doing that to audience goers. And the fact that I'm not the only one who felt like this, because the film cost $10 million to make, Dark Realmers, but it only got $1 million back in revenue at the box office, and the reviews, like mine, were hardly praiseworthy. And it's a shame that such two great acting talents like Nicole Kidman and Joseph Fiennes, and not to mention Hugo Weaving, were given a dud script to work with. But having said that, I will give it points because the scenery is beautiful. The harshness of the Australian outback, especially when there's a dust storm that hits the town, it's wonderful. And the cinematography in that sense is wonderful. It's let down by a bad script and actors who try their best to make it all work. It just doesn't come together. But if you would like to judge it for yourself, go ahead, okay? You'll find that one on Netflix, Dark Realmers. Okay, the next one I've got for you, Dark Realmers, is actually one I quite enjoy. And it's a really strange mixture because it's a dark, not quite horror, more psychological drama combined with action. And I'm talking sort of gangster action here. And this movie is great. It's called Stereo. Now, this is a German movie, and in this movie, Jürgen Vogel plays a motor mechanic who lives with his girlfriend and her young daughter. Now, his girlfriend's father doesn't really trust him, and he's a police detective or police constable, and he wants to know more about this guy's background, and he just finds his lack of information about himself a little bit disturbing, which is quite understandable considering, you know, he's protective of his daughter and his granddaughter. Well, into this happy little life comes some rather rough looking gangster types, and they insist that Jürgen isn't who he says he is and that they need him to help them out on a job. Well, it's not long after this that Jürgen begins to see a hooded man. Now, the hooded man doesn't tell him who he is, and as far as Jürgen knows, it's just, you know, this guy is a figment of his imagination. Well, he goes to a psychiatrist to get some answers to find out, and of course the psychiatrist says, well, can anyone see him? No, only I can see him. Does he talk to you? Yes, he talks to me. And this is where the whole plot of the movie hinges on, Dark Realmers, because once we find out who this hooded man is and what the connection to these gangsters are, it all falls into place, and it's brilliant. It's just a wonderful, wonderful twist, and it's very much dark in a psychological sense, but also dark because it deals with gang violence and drug lords and things like that. So fans of action movies will enjoy this too, but it's not gratuitously violent. It concentrates very much on the main character and his discovery to find out why this hooded man is talking to him, and is he losing his mind. And subtly interwoven into this is the detective father trying to find out more about his past. A great movie. You'll find that one here on YouTube, Dark Realmers, and as I said, there'll be a link to it, but check it out if you want something a little bit, maybe consider it a sort of mashup between the action genre and a psychological thriller genre. You'll really enjoy this one, Dark Realmers. Okay, Dark Realmers, now I had some trouble finding images from this movie, basically because when I watched it here on YouTube, its title was The Bunker. And when I went to search for images, I kept finding images of Adolf Hitler and war movies and so forth. But never despair, because a further bout of research, and I did discover that it was actually also called The Hoarder. Now, this is one of those low budget movies where you're not expected to think a lot, okay? Now, it basically involves a woman, and she's engaged to a fabulous man, but she's a little bit concerned that he may be cheating on her or something like that, and he's got a self-storage unit on the outskirts of town, and she's determined to go and have a look to see if there's any evidence that he may be cheating on her or doing something underhanded, and she enlists the help of one of her friends. Well, they go to this self-storage unit, and the geeky reception guy says to her, yep, you can, okay, you're his fiance, that's fine, I'll let you in, but we're closing in 25 minutes. Well, they get down to this basement level, which is creepy in itself, but when her friend goes inside to look for a light switch to actually, so that they can go and search, she gets murdered by something, and that's how the movie starts off. Now, I just found it really amazing that this woman who's running through this storage complex happens to meet a whole lot of characters who are also there 25 minutes before the place closes. And the first person she meets is a police detective, and that's very handy in itself, and it's also very handy that he has a gun. Now, there is a scene where you see him grabbing a bag full of money, and you may be thinking, okay, he might be a bit bent, but it's really stretching it a little bit that, you know, he just happens to be there. Anyway, we see some scenes of this thing that's chasing them, but it's not one of those monster type creatures that are after them. And you find out that the receptionist guy is actually sort of involved with this. I won't say any more, but look, it's creepy in its own way. It's a bit of good fun. It's definitely one you shouldn't take seriously, but there's some creepy moments in there, Dark Realmers, and for a low budget film, I think it does quite well in trying to deliver the chills. It doesn't always succeed, but it does it to its best, and that's all you can expect, you know, of some of these independent movies. And hey, where would we be if, you know, independent movie makers didn't, you know, stand up and say, hey, I'm going to make this movie, good or bad, I'm going to make it. We'd be lost with a lot of entertainment that we'd never see the light of day. So check this one out, Dark Realmers. As I said, it's not doesn't succeed on every level, but there's enough chills in there to creep you out a little bit, okay? Okay, Dark Realmers, I've saved the best one, well, the one I enjoyed the most anyway, till last. This one's called The Witching. Okay, Dark Realmers, now you may have seen another video I did about Hollywood cliches, and that was all about how in movies there were always telephone cliches, and in today's society there's always cliches about cell phones, bad reception, whatever. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. There's the description box upstairs for you to click onto. Okay, well, I'm very pleased to say the filmmakers in this movie didn't go down that route. Oh, hooray! Now, this is a story, it's wonderful. As I've told you before, I'm a big fan of movies that have short stories within them, and this one is a very clever idea. It's a clever take on horror campfire stories, and basically involves a group of college students who produce a podcast where they investigate haunted places and houses and so forth. And they're doing their podcast from the place where supposedly 60 odd years ago a witch was killed by the townspeople because she used to eat children, and they cut her open so that she could never come back and eat children again. Yeah. But while they're waiting for the witching hour and for this ghost of this witch to appear, they all begin to tell short stories, and I loved it. There were some great short stories in here, too many for me to go through. Not just the 3 or 4 you normally get within a movie. There was quite a lot of short horror stories in this. Now, there were a lot of great short stories in this one, but the two that stood out for me were Hourglass Figure and The Psychic. And Hourglass Figure was just brilliant. Now, in this story, we're shown a housewife who's a little bit slovenly. She never seems to have enough time in the day to take care of her kids, to keep the house clean, and her husband says, look, Mum managed to do it, why can't you? Well, on one of her foraging expeditions into the closets and so forth, she finds this beautiful ornate hourglass, and her husband explains to her, yeah, that was Mum's, we were never allowed to touch it. Well, she reads a little card or piece of paper that says, if you turn this hourglass over, you will gain 1 hour extra per day. But be careful, and the piece that gives her warning is ripped off. So she's a bit sceptical at first, but she tries it, and she finds amazingly that she can turn back time for an hour. And so she gets everything she wants done. She goes to the gym, she fixes herself up, she starts looking fantastic. Well, things start to get out of hand because she's only meant to use it once a day. And of course, people, when they get that sort of power, they get a little bit greedy, don't they? And you'll be just blown away at what happens, especially when her daughter, her youngest daughter, the baby, gets hold of this hourglass and begins turning it back and forward. It's wonderfully written, not horrifying, just one of those delightful films, movies short films where you get, that lovely twist at the end, where be careful what you wish for. That was one of the highlights for me in this movie anyway. Now, the other short film in this I really, really loved was called The Psychic, and it basically tells the story of a radio DJ and he does one of those shows that explore the unknown and the creepy, you know, alien abductions and so forth, but he's a real skeptic. He doesn't believe in any of it. Well, one of his guests for the evening is a psychic, and she claims to be able to talk to God and the devil. And of course, he tries to belittle her and tell her she's a charlatan. Well, one of the callers he gets through says, "Hi, I'm God." And he goes, "Yeah, right." But then God starts telling him things that only this DJ could possibly know, and it starts to freak him out a little. The next caller happens to be the devil, and I won't tell you any more, but the ending is just classic. It's just wonderfully, it was very cleverly written. Now, the whole movie is a great romp. It's you know, a low budget film, but it's definitely got some great writing in there, okay? Some of the stories are better than others, but that's always the case when you're dealing with a movie that has little vignettes inside of it. But of course, the overriding premise of the whole movie is you know, this witching hour and what will happen, and I'll leave that for you to find out, Dark Realmers, okay? But needless to say, it ends on quite a frightening note, okay? So check that one out for you. Now, that one is available here on YouTube, so you lucky people, you don't have to go far to visit it. Okay, Dark Realmers, that's it for this particular movie review. I hope you've liked some of the choices I found for you. They're great little movies, and half the fun of doing the Dark Realm Diaries is finding things that even I were unaware of. And so one of the joys I get is presenting things to you for you to check out for yourself and perhaps gain some enjoyment from. Okay, Dark Realmers, so that's it for this episode. Remember, if you've liked this video and this review, please hit down below and hit the like button. I really do appreciate it, and it does help the Dark Realm Diaries grow even more. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, because I'd love to hear what you think of some of the movie choices I've found. Okay, and if you want to keep up to date with all the latest from the world of horror, myths and legends, superstitions, all the Dark Diary stuff, just remember to subscribe in the buttons. Okay, well, that's it for this episode, Dark Realmers. Now I'll leave you and do some more research to find some creepy stuff for you. But until then, this is Michael J. Elliott signing off. And remember what I always say, Dark Realmers, stay in the light. Bye.